This is episode 19 of the Joyful Movement Show, and today is all about mums and how we can go from surviving to thriving through the chaos of motherhood. This message, though, will be relevant to all the women out there. So if you're not a mom, I encourage you to keep listening as our guest has some golden nuggets that you're going to want to hear. Hi there. Welcome to the Joyful Movement Show. I'm your host, Kim Hagel, mom, recovering dieter, and founder of Radiant Vitality Wellness. As a personal trainer with my own story of body acceptance, I've seen firsthand how diet culture influences the fitness industry and the damage it causes the women I work with, keeping them on the start-stop cycle, struggling to find motivation. It's now my mission to empower women to break free from torturous exercise, restrictive eating, and body shame. Stick with me and I'll help you discover what moves you so that you can tap into that burning motivation deep inside yourself and experience joyful movement, peace with food, and feel confident in your own skin. Are you ready? Let's lace up our runners, pop the earbuds in, and go for a walk while we chat. Hello, friend. Welcome to the Joyful Movement Show. If you're new here, I'm Kim Hagel, personal trainer, registered holistic nutritionist, and after undergoing my own journey of recovery from diet culture, I've made it my mission to help women break free from restrictive eating, punitive exercise, and being a slave to the scale so that they too could find the same freedom and peace within their bodies. Now, if you've been tuning in for a while, you know me and you know that I'm a mom of 4 amazing humans. And though I work really hard in my business, I consider parenting to be my most important job. And it's certainly the job that comes with the greatest challenges, joys, struggles, and rewards. I love being a mom and learning and growing alongside my kids. Every day they inspire me and make me proud, and they make me want to be a better person. Now, all that said, motherhood is no joke. Being a woman is no joke. I don't know about you, but I've certainly felt pressure over my mothering career to get it right. You know what I mean? To be a good mom who raises healthy kids, to keep up with the career while keeping up the house, manage the schedules, prepare the meals, bake the healthy snacks, run the kids to their extracurriculars, to throw the perfect birthday parties and play dates, and oh yeah, take care of myself too. It seems like there's always so much to do and so much pressure to do it well and not near enough time or resources. Is it just me? I don't think so. And I know that our guest today has had the same observations. On this episode, I'm joined by Unyime Oguta, who's on a mission to help moms go from surviving to thriving through the chaos of motherhood. Unyime is a speaker, a certified intuitive eating counselor, and a non-diet nutrition coach for moms. And she's got a really refreshing outlook on motherhood and raising healthy kids. She's passionate about helping busy, overwhelmed moms transform their relationship with food so that they can gain food freedom, thrive, and feel empowered to raise children who have good relationship with food and their bodies. Unyime is committed to providing compassionate, holistic, evidence-based nutrition care to women and their families worldwide through her virtual nutrition coaching practice and her podcast, the Thriving Mom Podcast. Unyime and I had a really fun, candid chat here. We talked about the pressures moms feel and how they can let go of society's expectations to have a more simplified approach to nutrition. We talked about how to help our kids become confident and competent eaters without obsessing over feeding them healthy food. We got into body image and how it's important for us moms to manage our self-talk and how we can help our daughters especially to have a more peaceful body image. And most importantly, we talked about how important it is for moms or women in general to prioritize ourselves so that we can not only survive, but thrive through the chaos. Like I say, Unyime has a really unique and refreshing approach, and you're not going to hear the same old self-care talk on this episode. So whether you're a mom or a mom at heart, this episode's for you. And with all that said, let's turn it over to Unyime. Hi, Unyime. Welcome to the Joyful Movement Show. I'm so happy that you're here.
Thank you, Kim. I'm really happy that you brought me on here and I'm excited to be here.
Well, I am excited too. And I'm really looking forward to this conversation because I'm really inspired by everything that you share in your community, on your social media, and on your podcast about thriving in motherhood. I just even love the sound of that saying, because often we just look at motherhood as something we must survive. It's so demanding, right? But I love your gentle approach to not only surviving, but thriving through motherhood. So I know that you're going to share some real golden nuggets of wisdom with our listeners today, and I'm excited. So, can you talk to me a little bit about what you do and how you ended up starting the Thriving Mom community?
Absolutely. That's a great question. And I love that word thrive too.
Yeah.
So, to cut the long story short, my journey to finding myself as a mom started because I was afraid of a colonoscopy.
Mm.
So when I had, I think I was pregnant with my second child. I was just finishing up my nutrition degree in the university. I was working full time, volunteering because you needed that to get into dietetics,
Mm.
and also volunteering in other capacities. So there was a lot going on.
Yeah.
And prior to this, my thought had always been, well, this is what moms do. You know, you need
Mm.
to do all the things and then you find balance. Well,
Did you
rude
find it?
awakening that no, didn't happen for me. No, what happened for me was that I ended up with really bad digestive issues.
Oh.
For about 6 months, I was going through several tests, several medications. Nothing was working. My doctor finally gave up and said, you know what? I think you have IBS. I'm
Mm.
just going to confirm and I'm going to send you to go get a colonoscopy. And right away, I felt the cold shiver just come through my body
Yeah.
because I hate hospitals.
Mhm.
I don't like going in hospitals. I don't want people touching me, doing none of that. So I asked her for a week and I never went back.
Wow. How
I
did you?
never, I never went back. And what I asked her for was, you know what? Let's do a week. I'm going to go back and I'm going to try and see what I can do in the meantime. So I started doing my own research, looking at my symptoms. And the thing that kept coming up for me was stress.
Mm.
Stress was a big part of that. Now, if for people who know a little bit about stress, you know that when stress builds up in the body, it needs a way to leave. You need to process stress. I was not processing stress. I was busy being a busy mom,
Mhm.
being the good wife, the good mom, the good woman who had everything going on. And I wasn't handling stress. And that's how it came out. So I talked to my doctor about it, and she decided, well, so what are you going to do? Because we need to address this issue.
Mhm.
It's either you do the letting go of the stress or you go on medication. Again,
Right.
I don't like medications. So
Yeah.
I decided to take things off my plate. That's when I started saying no to a bunch of commitments, dropping so many things, finally accepting help, which is a big
Uh-huh.
struggle for moms.
Uh-huh. Me
And then
too.
I just learned that, you know what? Motherhood has seasons.
Ah.
And of course, I'm a spiritual person. So these things started coming up to me, and I was observing nature and how nature changes. You've got different seasons, spring and summer and fall, and different things are happening in all those seasons. So I started thinking about those things. And this word thriving just came up for me. It was
Mm.
like, this is how nature works. Nature and things that live in nature, they thrive. They go through seasons. So a plant will bloom in the summertime. In the fall, the leaves start to fall because it's preparing itself for winter when it doesn't need to work as hard. It just needs to rest. And then once spring comes, it starts again. And
Mm.
that's where all of this came up. So that's the short story of how thriving came about and building this community, because I know that there are a lot of us out there. And for me, it wasn't so much about changing myself. It was more like I could see the impact on my children,
Mhm.
and observing from my mom's generation to our generation. It was more like, if we want to change the next generation of women and actually thrive as women, we need to be changing how we think about motherhood, how we think about womanhood, and
Uh-huh.
the expectations that are put on us. So that's where we
Yeah.
came from. And here we are now. I do this work. I coach women as well. And this is a big part of what I talk about.
Yeah. Oh, so much of what you just said really resonated with me. And there's a few things there that I want to come back to and unpack. But I really like how you mentioned, how we need to process our stress, right?
Yes.
Motherhood is demanding. It's a busy time, and raising little people, like they demand a lot from us. And
Mhm.
there's so much joy in motherhood, but there's stress too. If you're trying to build a career and maintain a household and a relationship with your partner and raise healthy, confident kids, like it's a lot of pressure.
It
And
is.
what I hear a lot from moms in my world is like how they just can't fit in one more thing, right? Like finding time for movement is a struggle, right? And like
Mhm.
that's what I hear in my world being a personal trainer. So can you talk a little more about why it's so important to prioritize ourselves as moms and when it comes to caring for our own bodies and with food and movement?
That's a great question. So I know for you being a personal trainer, that's one of the things you'll find a lot of women, like you said, they don't have the time to fit in that extra movement.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for the most part, when we think about time for ourselves, the society has created this monster where it's like, women are living their lives for other people. We
Yeah.
feel that we're put on this earth to serve other people.
Mm-hmm.
And if things don't go well, then it's our fault, right? But
Mm-hmm.
then we forget that our bodies are the vehicles through which we live and experience life. Our
Yeah.
bodies are the vehicles that are taking us around. Imagine if you have a vehicle that you drive up and down your house every day and you're just ignoring it. Then what happens?
Mm-hmm.
The check engine light comes on, you ignore it. The wiper fluid goes out, you ignore it. And all of a sudden, you go to start it one day and it's not starting, and you wonder what the problem is.
Yeah.
So I feel that women, yes, the society tells us that you need to do all these things. And for some of us, we're not even sure where to start. So then it becomes overwhelming. But
Mm-hmm.
if we could take a step back and actually think about what matters, I ask this question a lot: what matters?
Yeah.
That's about setting priorities for what's important to you.
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't mean that this is a selfish act. It's a selfless act. That's the best thing you can do for the people around you, for your partner, for your kids, for your friends.
Mm.
Asking what matters and then moving on from that.
Yeah.
When you ask what matters, then it's easy to know what's a priority. And those priorities change. I talk about the seasons and the
Mm-hmm.
rhythms in our lives. Those priorities change. The woman that you are when you need to be chasing a toddler around the house, like both of us were talking just now, how your toddler is in the house, that's going to be different. You're going to be different once your toddler grows out of those years.
Yeah.
And being open and just trusting that we know what we're doing.
Mm.
Yes, the society is telling us what it's expecting, but when we name what matters, then we can trust ourselves and know that, you know what? I know what I'm doing and it's not going to be perfect. Because a lot of us moms too struggle with perfectionism.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I wanted to talk about that as well. Sorry, did you have more? I cut you off there, but
Oh, that's fine.
it brought me to something because yeah, I am a recovering perfectionist, like I know you say you are as well. And
Mhm.
it took me a while to understand, like you say, that there's seasons in life. We don't have to be on and killing it all the time, right? There's times where things ebb and flow, and we just have to go with those natural rhythms in life. And you know, I want to talk for a second about some of those societal pressures. Like I've had a long history with dieting and trying to control my body, but if I really think about it, the time when that really took hold was probably when I became a mom, right? Because
Mhm.
there are all these societal pressures to do it right and raise healthy kids. And
Mhm.
I started thinking like I had to just feed my kids healthy food all the time. I put that in air quotes: healthy food, good food. There were certain things that I would keep in the house and certain things I wouldn't, and things that they were allowed and not allowed. And I just like internalized all this societal pressure and obsessed about doing it right when it came to feeding my kids. So, can you give us some tips on how women can just simplify nutrition and let go of those societal expectations when it comes to motherhood and raising healthy kids? That was
That's
a
a lot
lot.
to
That
unpack.
was a lot. No pressure.
Where do we start? I think that's a great question. And I hope that the moms who are listening or the women who are listening really take this to heart, because that's really where change starts. I talked about prioritizing and just naming what matters.
Mhm.
But then we have to recognize that this pressure also comes from the expectation that if you're a mom and you're a good mom, this is the way you need to act. So
Mhm.
some of those things we learned from our own moms growing up. The other things might be a cultural thing, it might be a social thing. Maybe the moms in your group, this is what they're doing. So
Mhm.
you feel the need to do that. Now, for most people, they might say, well, it's simple, it doesn't bother me. But I remember when I was talking on another podcast episode, I talked about if you think these things are not affecting you, then something is giving. It's either you're going to deal with it in a different way. It might come out in drinking. It
Mm.
might come out in food addicting behaviors. So where you overeat or you use food to eat emotionally,
Mhm.
it'll come out some way.
Yeah.
So how do you want to deal with it? Do you want to keep going with those behaviors, or you actually want to address it and simplify your life? That's the big question, right? Because
Mhm.
when you question yourself that way, your body knows and will respond in a way that it wants you to go. So then when
Mhm.
it comes to simplifying nutrition, I laugh because it's just so crazy with Pinterest and social media
Oh,
and all the photos.
oh gosh, yes.
It's everywhere and it's
Uh-huh.
challenging and
Yeah.
it's a struggle. So I'm not going to sit here and say, oh no, if you just get rid of all those things, it's going to be fine. No. We also have that in the food guidelines, right? Like you and
Uh-huh.
I live in Canada, and I'm sure maybe when you had your kids, you looked at the feeding guidelines of 0 to 3 or whatever
Yep.
age, and this is what you should be feeding them. But we need to remember that all of these things, all of these rules, all of these expectations are there for the people who choose to do it. It's a
Oh.
choice,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
You can choose to participate, you can choose not to participate, but it's a choice you have to make. And a lot of us struggle with making that choice. We want other people to make the choice for us so then we don't take responsibility for it. So we have to put on our big girl pants, take
Mhm.
responsibility, and start making choices and living like the CEOs of our lives that we are.
Yeah, and
Going, go ahead.
no, I was gonna say, like, and yeah, I love how you said it's a choice. You get to like pick and choose what works for you. I think what I discovered after many years of feeling pressured and like not being responsible for my choices and just doing what I thought I had to was realizing like, yeah, I am responsible for how I feel and how I raise these kids, right? So yeah, there's all the rules, there's all the pressures, there's all the guidelines, but I get to decide if they're serving me and serving my family and
Exactly.
take what works and get rid of what doesn't.
Exactly. Exactly. And then when you think about it, it's we all have different privileges, right? So
Mm-hmm.
then what does your privilege allow you to do versus somebody else? When you start thinking about those things and thinking about your own situation and what makes sense for my family, what doesn't make sense, then it really makes you think. So going back to just simplifying the nutrition when it comes to feeding the kids is what's most important for you when it comes to feeding your kids. Do you want kids that are very good at eating vegetables and all the healthy stuff in quotes, that when they go out to a party,
Mm.
they're the one hanging out at the dessert table and eating like they'd never seen food before?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I'm speaking from my own personal experience here,
Yeah.
because that was what happened with my first child.
Mine
I was
too.
very I was very against, no sugar, no juice. Of course, I was also doing I remember back then we would do this nutrition presentations where you see this is how much sugar is in a box of juice, and they would show you the cubes.
Uh-huh.
And I remember vividly using that as a scale. So I would never let my child drink juice. And
Yeah.
guess what she'd do when we go out? She would want to drink like 4 boxes of juice. And
Yeah.
I'm just sitting there so embarrassed. So,
Right.
what's important to you?
Yeah.
The important thing for us is that we help our children develop good behaviors with food and
Mm-hmm.
a healthy relationship with food in the structure of our homes
Mm-hmm.
without restrictions, right?
Yeah.
Without restriction. When you give them that freedom, and then it allows them to experiment, it allows them to be more open to trying new things. It
Yeah.
allows them to be more open to seeing, what does my body tell me about this food? What does
Mm-hmm.
my body tell me about how much food I ate? Oh, perhaps I need to pull back. Perhaps I shouldn't be eating that one because I don't feel very good. By simplifying our expectations, it allows us to really pay attention and listen to
Mm-hmm.
what our kids are telling us about how they want to be fed. And then we can respond kindly,
I love that.
right?
Yeah, I love that. As you say, if I could do it all over again, there's lots of things I would do differently. But I had a very similar experience with my oldest child, and she's 16 now, and she doesn't really love it when I talk about her on
Of
social
course.
media or podcasts, but I'm going to right now, and she will hopefully forgive me. But um, after years of having very tight restrictions in our home and lots of food rules, I started to notice that she would sneak foods.
Mm-hmm,
Like you say,
mm-hmm,
the kid at the dessert table who
mm-hmm.
was eating like it was the Last Supper, like she started to get her hands on some candy and things like that and would start to sneak it and hide it in her room. And that was an eye opener for me. I was like, oh, I realized very quickly, like I have created this.
Mm-hmm.
And, and then there was the other behavior too that came along with that. Like she would refuse vegetables of almost every kind. Right. And I'm like, in me trying my best to raise a quote healthy child, a healthy eater, look what has happened. It's gone so far in the other direction, right? So, now she's 16 and it's been several years where we have been eating in a more intuitive, gentle way. And, it's starting to come around. But yeah, like I say, I would totally do that different if I had it to do again. But
Wouldn't we all? And
fortunately, I've
it's,
had three other kids that I could fix.
you have lots of practice. That's what I always say. I say my other two kids are they're the intuitive eating kids.
Yeah.
The other one, not so much. We're still working on that. It's
Yeah.
funny that you bring up candy because I actually had an experience where my daughter would put candy under her pillow. And every time you go to change the sheets, you would see the candy
Ooh.
wrappers because, again, she was hiding. And the thing with the vegetables that you brought up as well, when we make something a rule,
Mhm.
chances are we're pushing for someone to break those rules. So
Ah,
the more we push the vegetables on them, the more they push back. Because let's not forget, yes, our role is there for food, but our kids are also growing up and becoming their own people. And
mhm,
they also have to figure out their own sense of autonomy.
mhm,
So I always talk about this in my food program when we need to recognize our roles as parents when it comes to the feeding relationship, and our kids have their roles. So for us as parents, we're responsible for providing the what.
mhm.
We decide the when, and then we decide where we're eating. But
Yeah.
our kids, they decide how much they want to eat and whether or not they want to eat. I know it's difficult for moms to hear that, but this is what has been found by Ellen Satter, who's a family therapist and a dietitian. She found this is the best model for cultivating those healthy eating habits and having a healthy relationship with food with our kids. So it's very important for us to remember that when it comes to eating, there's just so much you can do,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah. And just like us, they have their own tastes, their own preferences, they have their own appetite, and really, who are we to say what they feel and what they should
Exactly.
want, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mhm. Okay, so switching gears here, we're running short on time, but I really want to get to this last topic because I think it's really important, and it's been on my heart lately as a girl mom, and I know you're a girl mom too. And I have one who's just on that cusp of coming into puberty, and her body's changing, and body image is a thing that we think about and talk about a lot in our home. And I know that it's something that we as moms deal with too. Our bodies undergo a lot of major changes through the childbearing years, and some of them end up being permanent. So what suggestions do you have for moms to make peace with their body, in the midst of all of these physical changes that they're going, and in a society that really favors thinness and equates thinness to health? How do we make peace with our body and the changes that it's gone through?
Just going back to realizing what matters.
Mm,
We have to recognize that our bodies are not ornaments. Our bodies are the vehicles through which we see and live and experience the human life.
mm-hmm.
So when we see it that way, yes, it's easy for someone like me who has thin privilege to say this is how we should see it, but you have to recognize it for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
This body has been with you through everything you've been through. Our bodies are always trying to protect us, and it will do whatever it needs to do to keep you safe and protect you.
Mm-hmm.
Never forget that. Now,
Mm-hmm.
to come back to some practical things we can do, I always start with editing what you're consuming. So, your social media, what are you watching on TV, the magazines you read, the books, the people you're listening to, start by editing those things. The things that don't make you feel good about your body, perhaps it's time to let them go. What
Mm-hmm.
about those diet books? Let them go.
Yeah.
Put them aside and start focusing on more body positive and body neutral media to consume. Focus on those things.
Mm-hmm.
Secondly, figure out how to heal your relationship with food. Let go of those food rules. What are the rules that you tell yourself? Oh, people who look like this shouldn't eat this way. Perhaps that's not the case. How do I go back to figuring out a good way to relate with my body?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And dress in comfortable clothes.
Oh, yes.
Right?
Thank you.
Something. That's a really tough one because we still hang on to those clothes that we had before we had kids, hoping that one day we'll
Uh-huh.
go back and fit. And it's been 17 years and you're still waiting. Maybe
Yeah.
it's time to let it go.
They're not in style anymore either, by the way.
True. It might come around. I don't know because fashion just keeps coming back, you know? But just letting those clothes go. And I know that's a hard one for people. Hold on to the memories you had, but let those clothes go so they can serve other people. And then try and find clothes that fit for your here and now body,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yep.
And just take it in. It doesn't have to be this huge thing that you do, one day at a time, a simple thing that you can do, and start to talk to yourself in a positive way. Stop
So
the
important.
negative talk,
Yes.
right?
Out
Talk
loud
to
and in
yourself
your head.
and in your head.
Yeah.
You and I do mindset work. We do the thought work, and we know that those thoughts are very powerful. Start talking to yourself like you love yourself. If you
Mm-hmm.
loved yourself, what would you do?
Yeah.
What's the kind thing you would do, right?
Yeah.
If you can't think about loving yourself, think about if I love my kid or I love my pet,
Yeah.
how do I treat them?
Yeah.
And do that to yourself. So I think
Mhm.
those are the main things that really come to my mind right now that would help people just to get started.
Mhm. And I think that last thing you mentioned is so important, right? Watching what we say, both in our head and out loud, and
And
especially as
especially in front of our kids.
exactly, that's where I was going, is like our kids really need to see us maybe not loving our body if that's too far out of reach, but at least being respectful to ourselves, right? And
Mhm.
not talking diet talk, not talking I need to eat this way to lose weight, not trying to fit into clothes that don't fit, all those things. Our daughters are, well, our sons too, they see that, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
Very important. And these are things that we just do automatically and we don't know.
Yeah,
So, really, just being aware that these are the things that impact our
yeah.
children, it's very important for us moms and everyone in general. I think
Mhm.
we're at that point where we just need to let all of that go.
Yeah, a lot more self-compassion and kindness, as you say.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very important.
Is there anything else that's on your heart to share today, we may?
I think for me, the biggest thing is just we've talked about a lot,
Mm.
but we always have to go back to what would it look like if it was simple?
Yeah.
What would it look like if it was simple? What would movement look like if it was simple?
Yeah.
What would eating feel like if it was simple? How would I treat my body if things were simple?
Yeah.
And just think about that. For me, that's the biggest thing. We don't have to do everything. We cannot do everything
Mhm.
because that's when we run into problems. But if we can just think about what is the simple thing I can do and how can I do that today? And then just that's pretty much it.
I love that. I often say create a game you can win, right? Because
Oh, yeah.
yeah, it's like a favorite saying of mine because we tend to set the bar really high and we make things really hard on ourselves, right? But like you
Hmm.
say, simple is a choice that's available to us.
And
Which
it's
is,
free.
yeah, yeah, which is awesome. Well, that was a great conversation. I know that I myself got lots out of that. I know it'll be helpful to our listeners. So I know that my listeners are going to want to connect with you to learn more. Where can they find you, Ime?
Since we're on a podcast, I would say the place to find me would just be on my podcast, the Thriving Mom Podcast. I'm not on Instagram with that name. My name on Instagram is at Olive and Bliss Wellness. So they can find me there as well, and on Facebook. So any of those channels, you can find me. And I would love to connect too.
Great. And you have provided a free resource for our listeners as well, a food freedom guide that they can download. So I'll put that link in the show notes too, as well as all the others that
Absolutely.
you mentioned.
Thank
Oh,
you.
well, yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate you taking the time. It's been an amazing conversation. I really appreciate you.
Thank you for the opportunity, Kim. This was fun. I really appreciate it too.
Well, friend, what do you think? I told you she was refreshing. I hope that conversation gave you some food for thought and some tips that you can use to help move towards thriving instead of just surviving. I've said often in the last couple of years that I so wish I'd had the knowledge and tools I have now when my kids were little. If I'd have known what I did then about intuitive eating and health at every size and even the power of my own thoughts, I feel like those stressful days of raising littles would have been a lot more manageable. But when you know better, you do better. And I'm thankful for that because as I've learned and grown, I've taken that mindset into my parenting, and it has made a huge difference in the whole mood of our family and our relationships. So I hope that this gives you some hope too. In the meantime, you definitely want to follow Unyime and the Thriving Mom podcast for more inspiration and encouragement. She's really the best. And on that note, if you loved her and you want to hear more from her, she's going to be one of the guest experts at my upcoming virtual health summit that I'm hosting April 5th to 16th. Embrace Your Radiance will be a 10-day online event to help you improve your body image, your relationship to food and movement, and chase health in your now body. I've compiled 10 amazing experts to share on a variety of non-diet health topics so you can learn from the very best in the industry. I was fortunate enough to have been able to learn from people like these on my own journey, so I wanted to pay that forward by creating this event for you. I really encourage you to check it out and register at www.radiantvitality.ca/embraceyourradiance. The link's also below in the show notes. It's free to attend, and it's going to be packed with value. So thank you so much for tuning in today. I appreciate you so much, and I hope you found this episode helpful. If you did, I would be so honored if you'd leave a review on iTunes or share this episode with a friend. Both Unyime and I are on a mission to help as many women as possible discover a new way of being in their body, and your shares help our messages get to the people who need it. Thank you so much. Until next week, friends, be well, and here's to your radiant vitality. Hey, before you go, I just want to tell you how grateful I am for you. It means the world to me that you're part of our Radiant Vitality community. I've got a free gift for you. Head on over to my website and download The Motivation Secret, the simple mindset shift that will get you off the start-stop cycle for good. The link is in the show notes. And hey, if you enjoy this podcast, the greatest gift you could give me is to leave a review or share this episode with a friend. Your shares and reviews help move our show up the rankings on the podcast directories so that it can be seen by more women just like you who are ready for something different with fitness. Bye for now, friend.